Hi, welcome to Fictionology. This is Gideon,
And this is Bardicans.
and we're coming to you live again from our undisclosed bunkers deep in the heart of nowhere important, riding out the COVID quarantine in style and ready to discuss and analyze and basically flap our jaws endlessly about fiction.
Sounds like a plan to me. What are we looking at today then?
Well, the first thing we're going to look at, Bardicans, I'm glad you asked that question, is our highly stylized avatars up in the top left hand corner. Ladies and gentlemen, as we've mentioned before, this is a bit of a work in progress here. Fictionology is an unscripted, unrehearsed effort by two friends. And if you need any additional evidence of how unscripted and unrehearsed it is, you need only look at the high quality avatars next to our names.
Yes, that's right. And expertly done in
Yeah,
several seconds
yes, we
using
spent
paint.
we spent tens of seconds pulling this off. Right now, we're waiting on you know more professional, shall we say, more professional and visually stimulating avatars. But we also don't want to wait too long to put out content. We're excited to have this dialogue not only with one another, but hopefully with you all as well, who are watching. All three of you, avid fans who want to provide feedback and commentary as well.
And let
So
me just say, we certainly appreciate every third person who listens to 5 seconds of this video.
that's a
And
lot of numbers. I don't know if I can do the math on that.
but we appreciate it. We don't have to
We
do the math. We can appreciate it.
we do appreciate it indeed. And in the spirit of that, I think it's important to continue our Star Wars trend, just given that this is actually a busy time for Star Wars. Now that the Skywalker saga has wrapped up, actually going on a year now, the end of Rise of Skywalker. Star Wars Squadrons and the Mandalorian are still looming on the horizon,
Right,
approaching.
right.
Mandalorian, especially, I know is a big deal to a lot of fans, and the season 2 trailer debuted last week, and we thought it might be interesting to view it and give our unfiltered, untrammeled thoughts and reactions. What do you think,
Yeah, I think
Bartikins?
that sounds. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that sounds really fun. And but before we do that, shouldn't we talk about season one? What were your feelings and thoughts on season one of the Mandalorian?
There are many and varied.
Good point.
Honestly, Bartikins, I'll be very candid. I was not a huge fan of the Mandalorian. I didn't think it was bad, but I thought that it was overrated. The premise is interesting. So after a high budget sequel trilogy that
Hmm.
right or wrong raised the stakes, the cosmic stakes, and had bigger Death Stars and planet killing star fleets. I like the idea of a more intimate story. I think Star Wars sometimes loses focus of that not everything has to be a galactic ending event. The stakes can be incredibly important on just a planetary level. And I think The Mandalorian understood that. And
Right.
so the premise is interesting to me. Again, this kind of spaghetti Western, with a morally ambiguous stoic hero, kind of like the John Wayne days and stuff like that. I thought that was interesting. And yet, I thought the execution was kind of mixed. Um, there's no question that like John Favreau, who's
Right.
the showrunner, from Iron Man fame,
Hmm.
and a reputable director in his own right, he teamed up with Dave Filoni to bring the Mandalorian here, and they had many guest directors throughout the first season, like um, like Taki Watiti. I probably butchered that name. The guy who directed the gentleman who
Yeah. Right.
directed Thor
Thor
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok.
Which was
Yeah.
great, among others. And so definitely it was high profile, high budget. Um, but some people are making this sound like it's the new Game of Thrones, and maybe it is, but I don't think it's more like season 5 or season 6 of Game of Thrones, which it's all right, but not earth shattering. This isn't The Wire. This isn't Breaking Bad.
Sure.
But it's also the first season, and I also think it marks a paradigm shift in Lucasfilm, where they're taking advantage of the Disney Plus streaming service and going lower profile. Excuse me. So I'm open to it. I think there are the pieces there for it to be very intriguing. But I'm not going to sit here and fangirl over it. I'm not going to gush. I thought it was a mixed bag personally. What about you?
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Actually, one of the things that I really loved about the um the ambiance, right? How it felt. It was very
It
grim,
was
but
very
it showed
moody.
more of a moody. Yeah, and all of the episodes were kind of like centered around very little speech from the main character at first, and the emotions were shown through actions and movements and
Body
uh,
language, yeah.
right, body language, and just atmosphere, right? You got a lot of atmosphere.
We did. We saw a lot of ships go through it.
That's very true.
Oh,
That's very true.
you mean metaphorical atmosphere?
I mean, we had right. We had the hobo taxi stand. Uh, sort of an inside joke, but
Very, I think it was the very first episode, very
that
first
was
season,
the
the
very
first
first.
episode.
Yes, that's right. That was the
Yeah,
very first episode.
the
All
guy
the
who
way
played
up.
the flute and summoned the Uber. That was very strange.
Right. All the way up through something like an ATST being like a main boss. If it was a video game, being
Yes.
almost unstoppable. And then they had to come up with ways to stop it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of atmosphere I really appreciated. The scale was awesome in a lot of ways because you don't see the smaller, normal, everyday scale in Star Wars a lot.
So it was awesome in that it wasn't awesome. It the
It was
thing.
awesome in that it inspired, it was inspired awe, right? In the
Right.
true sense of the word. It was like, that's great. And that it was small and it wasn't grand
Yeah.
necessarily, right? At least not what we saw. There were grand machinations probably going on in the background, but what we saw was everyday life, right?
Right. Yeah. The
It
ATST thing is a good point that I hadn't considered in a while. I mean,
uh-huh.
to somebody like Yoda or Mace Windu or Luke Skywalker or Rey, they would moonwalk through that thing. That
You're
would never
right.
be done. They'd sneeze and disintegrate it.
But for farmers with sticks, it's a much bigger problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, it went through the entire episode was predicated on the ensuing confrontation with the chicken walker. Like the whole, it was built up as this dread machine, and they were fortifying the village. We saw the
Right.
preparations and then the ensuing
Right.
battle. Yeah, that's a great point that I hadn't really considered. That's emblematic of the scale of the struggle. It's being
Right. And
reduced.
that is the part that I loved about the first half of the season. Now the second half it kind of started to turn into more of a traditional party adventure,
Yeah,
with more action and stuff like that, which it's fine. It's just I was hoping for more of the almost grim dark, but not quite atmospheric um, protagonist who has very little to say unless spoken to directly, and
right.
and I didn't mind the addition of the, but that's where it kind of fell down for me. And my personal fear, and I wonder if you share this, is that they're going to make this nobody bounty hunter matter in a huge galaxy. Like all of a sudden, the scale's going to expand.
Like he'll be the canon equivalent of Legends Boba Fett, like how Boba Fett
Right,
became in the old continuity, this iconic badass, far beyond the scope of what his actual the majority of his feats and accomplishments suggest.
right, and he's going to catch the attention of the New Republic or something, and or large groups of really powerful people who have other things to worry about, and then all of a sudden the scale is just huge, and then it's another
I
another Clone Wars show or something.
I do have a bit of a fear of that. So
Hmm.
well, first thing I would say is you made an interesting point that it started to feel at the end like a party adventure. And again, I hadn't really considered that, but looking back on it, clearly that's the case. And I don't mind personally
Sure.
if it gets
Hmm.
there, but I agree with you that I wanted to see more of the that has to feel earned. That progress taking it from the first level to the second level where it becomes more of a classic party structure, that has to feel earned. And even when you get there, the scale has to be commensurate with the conflict. So it shouldn't be just this lone stoic armored protagonist, and then you jump into a party adventure, and then all of a sudden he's taking on another planet killer. It's
Right,
still,
right.
even if it becomes like a party adventure with like Gina Carano's character Cara Dune and the others, it still needs to feel local and small and intimate, and they can still be in danger, right? Because they're still human and
Sure.
fallible. But I agree with you. It really started to lean into that too quickly. And if it's gonna escalate to that party style adventure, then it needs to stay there for a while and just cool off and not jump to the next level. And I could see that, because that tends to be a Dave Filoni staple. I give Clone Wars a
Exactly.
pass.
That's right.
Well, you mentioned Clone Wars, so Clone Wars, I'll give Clone Wars had its faults. There again, I think that it was a show
Well,
that had its.
in
Go ahead.
I was just saying in Clone Wars, but Clone Wars had main characters that were the direct part of a galactic conflict, right? They were
Right,
the Jedi main characters, one of which was working or being manipulated by Palpatine
right,
directly. So,
right. So it dealt with the VIPs of the prequel era
right,
and the people surrounding them. So that's why I'll give the Clone Wars
sure,
a pass in
absolutely.
that regard. But
Hmm.
look at Rebels. Rebels started off with I wouldn't say an identical premise to the Mandalorian. Rebels started out with a similar premise in terms of scale. It was in the galaxy's backwater. It was a bunch of no-name characters who had no significance to the extant story, and they were coming together, and it was going to be about how a small group of malcontents take on the Empire away from the spotlight of Luke Skywalker and Leia, and Han and everybody. And
Right,
yet, halfway through the first season, they bring in Grand Moff Tarkin. And then at the end of the first season, they bring in Darth Vader. So I think it's in Filoni's nature, or maybe I shouldn't even say that. Perhaps it's pressure he gets from, the more commercial side of the business to say,
right.
hey, look, you need to drop
We need
in.
star power, right?
Yeah, exactly. Correct. So I'm not going to necessarily blame that on Filoni per se, but it tends to be a habit of his that or he has at least set the precedent, I should say. A habit suggests
Sure.
it's happened more than once, but he's at least done it once before, where he's taken an interesting small scale premise and then has blown it way out of proportion.
Hmm.
I hope he
Yes,
does not do that here.
I agree. Um, and before we move on to the trailer here, just season one recap really fast. If you had to do a scale of some type, what would you give it?
I don't think I think 10 on a 1 to 10 we'll do that scale. I think that a 10 doesn't really exist, because 10 almost implies perfection. I think nothing is perfect.
Right.
I would say on that scale, it was a 6, maybe at its best a 7, but I'm hedging towards 6. So I would say above mediocre, the high end of mediocre, with some moments of greatness. But I would say about a 6 or 7. What
Yeah,
about you?
I would probably put it on a 7. I
Yeah,
did the first half of it basically carried the whole thing for me, and
yeah,
I actually enjoyed watching the show. It wasn't bad or anything, more things
right.
like that, or seeing everyday life of people. So let's hope that season two can, it brings more of that atmosphere in. So
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
ready
I
to
hope
take a
so too.
look.
And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, season 1 did have Bill Burr in it as one of the bounty hunters on that New Republic ship, the comedian Bill Burr.
Oh
So I
yeah,
might have to tip it over to a 7, because anything that gets Bill Burr more exposure, I have to give. I kind of have to give the benefit of the doubt and grade on a curve there.
fair
Um,
enough.
yeah.
All right,
So I think without further ado, Mr. Bardikins, shall we proceed?
let us begin.
There's a planet hiding behind that planet. It's like, shh. Hey, look, it's the Serenity from Firefly.
It is. Looks like it.
Very similar. Begging
Someone's
for throat
clearing their
applause.
throat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Show me the one whose safety deemed such destruction.
There's one street
You must
lamp.
reunite
Okay.
it with its own kind.
It's the armor, I think, from
This you
season
must
1.
determine.
So she's not dead. She's dead.
The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi.
You expect me to search the galaxy and deliver this creature
Is that
to a
Ahsoka?
race of enemy sorcerers?
I'm not sure.
She's behind that
She's
box.
good at-
She
I was about to
crouched.
say
This is
that's
the
her
way.
special power.
It's force crouch. I like that. An actual naval ship.
Right. On water. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
You know this is no place for a child.
He just shut the
Wherever I
lights
go, he goes. So I've heard.
off.
They really don't like him.
He just got his ass kicked.
It opens it up.
Baby Yoda opens
This is the
up,
way.
sees him on the floor, hog-tied.
Right. This is the way. That was bad.
The way to lose a fight. Huh.
Yes.
Well,
Well,
I can
So
tell you if they're going for small scale and not particularly epic. This trailer was the way to signal that. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but I don't really understand what's going on.
no meat and potatoes.
No, and honestly, even though that is unusual, that may actually need to be how trailers should work from here on out, because I think too often trailers telegraph
Give
the
too
entire
much.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, they give way too much sometimes. Yeah, no, I
Way.
agree. Well, initial thoughts. It's beautiful, right? Beautiful
Mhm.
trailer. I think the people who work on the Star Wars trailers generally almost always do a good job
Yeah,
at making a spectacle, right?
100%. Yeah,
So-
they have it down to a science. There's no question.
I've really appreciated. You mentioned it earlier, the boat on the water with the ropes and everything. That is something I like to see in the Star Wars universe, because it's sci-fi, right? So there's there's fantasy, and there's some big spaceships and stuff like that. But what does the average everyday person do on some of these planets when a hover bike doesn't make sense or something? They still have fishing vessels, maybe,
Right.
or whatever. So
Yeah, you
and I like
definitely
that.
that to me really harkens back to Joss Whedon's Firefly. That sort of
Uh-huh.
like, anachronistic,
True.
people living
And-
a gritty lifestyle, netting fish, trawling for fish.
And who's the guy who did the designs for Alien? Where he made all the computers and stuff like their 1950s style.
Yeah, that guy. I think it's
yeah.
that guy, McGee.
That Mike, that
That
guy
guy.
McKee.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
a shame.
remember
I
his
can't.
name.
I can't remember his name. Yeah.
Yeah,
But stuff like that I like to see in sci-fi universes, because it can be very diverse and various. You have a whole galaxy. It's possible that some areas of the galaxy just don't have, or don't have the money for, or the need for certain types of improvements in technology,
Sure.
and that you see the side of industry that that isn't often portrayed, or if it's portrayed, like in Clone Wars, you saw farmers that are primitive. They were then quickly advanced 5,000 years.
well,
because
yes and no. I when I was younger, I would overthink that, because so much about Star Wars, if we're using like a hyper rationalist prism for interpreting like the distribution of technology, a lot of it doesn't make sense. But that's why I remembered Star Wars is not hard science fiction. It's really space fantasy. It is a
Right,
fantasy
no.
story dressed in science fiction trappings. And so you could say, because a lot of people do this all the time on message boards and in YouTube comments and stuff like that. Well, if they're capable of faster than light travel, then why are they deficient in this, and this regard? And that's true. It does seem to strain credulity, but I think the fact of the matter is, you could probably add so many like ad hoc justifications for why the technology, why everything isn't automated and done by droids. You could say, well,
Sure.
after the Clone Wars, there was a stigma against droids, and I'm sure that's been canonized somewhere. But I don't think I don't think you need to scratch too deeply about it. Like if somebody's looking for an explanation, like why the hell these guys are still fishing, I think your explanation would be fine. It's just it's an impoverished planet, and
Well, I don't even think you need to, but what I'm saying is it's fun. It's fun.
Yes, to
Everything doesn't
speculate.
have
Yeah,
to be everything doesn't have to be uniformly Imperial, uniformly New Republic.
right,
Everybody's riding new hover bikes and stuff like that,
right.
or old versions of hover bikes you've
Well,
seen before.
it is interesting you say new hover bikes, because one thing I noticed here too is compared to the Imperial presence in the first season, we see a lot of polish in the like the stormtroopers from what the few things that we glimpse, like even the hallways. In this trailer right here, the stormtroopers seem very well outfitted. You know, they're polished, which is a stark contrast to what we saw in season one. And you know, one of the interesting things about Star Wars canon on that note is that in the Legends continuity, which was, you know, for the one person of the three who are watching who may not know, you know, that was the collective Star Wars expanded universe before Disney bought it out, and then they wiped the continuity in 2014 and basically said only the movies and the Star Wars Clone Wars television series are canon, and everything else we do from here on out will branch off that. But in the old universe, what they now call Legends, the Empire limped on after the Battle of Endor for like over a decade. It lost a lot of ground, but it hung in there. The Galactic Civil War stretched on like another decade before it finally came to an official close. In canon, it technically lasts about another year after the Battle of Endor. And it concludes at the Battle of Jakku, Jakku being the desert planet in The Force Awakens that we see that Rey's on with all the wrecked Star Destroyers. That was the final clash between the New Republic and the remnants of the Empire. And so the Mandalorian, I think, takes place, I think, 7 years after the Battle of Endor. And that's why the Imperial remnants do exist, but they are true remnants. I mean, they're splinters of splinters. And that's why when we saw the stormtrooper armor, I distinctly recall in season one, it's gritty, they're tarnished, that they're no longer polished white.
Right.
The Empire's on hard times. In fact, the Empire really doesn't exist anymore. In here, in this trailer, looks different. It looks like they've power washed they've power washed the armor and the base.
They rehired the laundry guy.
Yeah, they did. They were like, Frank, you really need to, like, this is disgusting. You need to scrub this stuff down.
Well, what does that imply then? Like,
well, I mean, I haven't been following the rumors, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like, so we saw an ice planet. And I mean, this probably feels disjointed, but I promise you it all dovetails together, at least in my crazy interpretation. So we see Mando take the child through an ice planet, probably giving it hypothermia. It's going to die. That is poor guardianship on his part.
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever. We'll call CPS.
Deal with that one.
Yeah, that's a separate issue. But in canon, the Jedi got their lightsaber crystals from an ice planet called Ilum, among others. But Ilum was like the hub, the nexus of lightsaber crystals, and we see it in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, great game that we'll hopefully cover later on down the road. And later on, we find out that essentially, long story short, Ilum is being excavated by the Empire after the fall of the Jedi, and they are terraforming it to become Starkiller Base. The First Order eventually takes over where the Empire left off and finishes it.
That's right.
So it makes me wonder if he's gonna, take a trip and stumble across, an early iteration of the First Order on Starkiller Base. I mean, I could be wrong.
They did mention the Jedi and sorcerers and stuff like
that, which I appreciate. Yeah,
there was that figure there, and then of course
the crouching lady.
Yes, the crouching lady.
Is it
that moves slightly to the left.
Master Bardicans, is it possible to learn this power?
Yes.
Probably
You
not
see,
from probably not from a
when
Jedi.
someone walks between when someone walks between your vision, shift slightly to the left.
What sorcery is this? Yeah, that's so funny to imagine that. But yeah, I mean, the trailer's at least hinting that this person's a Jedi. Could be misdirection, and not
Sure.
that Ilum is the only ice planet in the galaxy, but I'm just it. You could
It could
put
be
the
a way to
piece,
tie
yeah,
stuff together, right? And to tie it to the greater universe and
which
canon and stuff.
would kind of be cool, but also really come close to the fear that we talked about at the beginning
If
of this video.
it depends on how they handled it, right? It depends on how they handle it.
I wouldn't be surprised, though. I mean, it's the cynic in me. I wouldn't be surprised if Mando's walking the halls of Starkiller Base with Baby Yoda, and he stumbles into Snoke's dressing room,
Right.
and you see Snoke seductively putting on that gold pimp robe that he has. And you just hear Andy Serkis go, I didn't see you there, and oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I hope if they do that, I'm sure it's possible to do that well. I hope they do it well. I hope they don't give this guy
If
an outsized role in the
a,
mythology.
a great way to do it would to have it in the background, right? You see a glimpse, a shimmer, a shadow, you overhear a muted conversation, something, but never directly.
About Snoke changing robes or start what do you
Yeah, yeah, right. And he's
No,
putting
no,
on
no,
a wig.
seriously. What do you mean? You mean like
Well, they
about
could be on Ilum. They could be that he could be unintentionally walking something that has to do with the films or something that ties it to the greater galaxy, but never directly interacts with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe he
So,
walks by Kylo Ren. Well, no, it's too soon for Kylo Ren's mask, but yeah, I don't mind Easter eggs, and I don't mind hints that he's part. He's a
well,
thread in a greater tapestry. But it just
that's that's the way I could see it being done without them directly interacting in a way that would expand the scope of the show.
yeah. I guess
And
I just don't trust. Again, it's the cynic in me. I'm not completely confident that Favreau and Filoni are subtle enough to do that. But
oh no, they'll probably have Ahsoka dueling Snoke at some point. Sure.
right. But anyway, I mean, again, the trailer looked
And I
good.
love Ahsoka, by the way.
Yeah, me
Just to get
too.
it out
I mean that is one rumor of which I'm familiar that the prevailing rumor is she'll play a huge role in Mando season 2, which again, Filoni took her from the Clone Wars, brought her into Rebels. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she's brought in here. And Ahsoka is definitely a fan favorite. She didn't always start that way. There's a lot of revisionist history going on that
Yeah,
that
I
she
remember
was
the
always
movie.
beloved. Yes, yeah, the Clone Wars movie. Yikes. But I am glad that eventually the audience became much more receptive to the character because she is a
Yeah, I
great
am.
character.
She is a great character. I
and
really
and
like her.
and it's great how her presence affects Anakin obviously most of all, but even like Captain Rex and others. So I think a deft hand, a subtle writer could weave somebody like that into this. And obviously the Jedi will play a presence in some way, shape, or form, even in their absence, right? Because you hear them in the voiceover. And
Sure.
I don't think even though the trailer didn't reveal what the overall story is going to be about this season, I don't think words and images are chosen for trailers haphazardly. Clearly there's a reason the lines about the Jedi were used in this trailer to introduce season 2. So I think we will see
Sure.
more of the mythology, especially as it relates to the child. And
And I'm sure
hopefully,
a lot of the visuals were hints of things like the boat. I'm sure it just wasn't a random boat in the middle of the sea for no reason.
I
I'm
want
sure there's
everybody to make note of that right now. And when it comes back, and
it's
that's
gonna be a
totally,
random boat in the middle of the sea.
it's
They're
actually
going.
called the USS Random Boat. That's the name of
So
it.
season 2 is going to be episodic, like,
Yeah.
and it's going to be every episode is going to be individual stories.
Yeah.
One is they're just going fishing in one.
Yeah, you have Lonely
So
Island show up and start singing "I'm on a Boat" with Mando in there too. It could be called the
yeah,
Mando Boat, Man Boat. Well, I was trying
man,
to come up with something clever, but I kind of failed the
bad.
landing there. My
It's
bad.
really bad.
Manda Boat,
Man,
Manda
no,
Boat. Okay, whatever.
man the boat.
Manda
Ha 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 ha.
Boatian, Manda Boatian. There you go. I win. I
Sounds
win.
like
You all
Decapodium.
doubted me. Um, yeah, so I could see some potential in weaving in with the greater, like the sequel trilogy. Maybe he'll walk past the Emperor hanging from his fishing hook.
Well, I don't think he might not be on the fishing hook yet, and he might still be in process or in
Yeah,
progress.
it could be like a
to that.
giant prolonged like Life Alert commercial for Palpatine, the reborn Palpatine.
Right.
We didn't see. I'll tell you notable absences. We didn't see Moff Gideon, Giancarlo Esposito, who was built up to be the big bad at the end of the last season.
That's true. That's true.
Giancarlo Esposito, which I know you have not seen much, if any, of Breaking Bad.
Not yet.
Yeah, that'll probably be a Fictionology project, excuse me. But
We did not make Breaking Bad.
No, we would violate so many copyright laws. Actually, guys, we are the creators of Breaking Bad. Spoiler
No, we
alert.
are not.
No, we're really not. Any attorneys on behalf of Vince Gilligan? I almost said Vince Gill, who's a country music singer, totally different. But any attorneys listening to this, we are not. We are unequivocally not the creators of legendary television show Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. But he is a great actor and a great presence on that show, as well as season 2 of The Boys, which is again another project that.
No, I did see him on there. So
yeah, he's just a great, highly acclaimed actor, plays a great villain, and I'm optimistic about Moff Gideon, which hopefully he will be in this.
Well, he shares your name, so there you go.
Yes, they named him after me, Gideon. There again, I'll say he didn't impress me all that much at the end of last season. But there again, because
kind of felt more like an introduction to him, though. So there's a lot of room to expand on that.
Yeah, he stood outside and gave the Gettysburg Address while they were hooking up that laser Gatling gun.
Yes.
Yeah. What an entrance! It was more effective. Was the end where he like slices his way out of that TIE fighter with the Darksaber.
Yeah.
Which has a rich history in both Rebels and the Clone Wars.
Because Filoni loves it, right?
Yeah, well, it is. I'll say this: that's a badass sword. It looks.
It really is. It looks great, and I think it fits. It's not, it's not anything that's too similar to like a lightsaber, right? And I think it fits, and it fit even in the Clone Wars and stuff. So I think it's fine. It's fine to bring it
and
back.
Definitely, it seems to be. I think more than anything, it's like it's the Excalibur of the Mandalorian culture. It's like that recurring icon that emblemizes the Mandalorian culture, which is hilarious because it spent most of its time in the hands of like the Sith. Like Darth Maul had it, for a long time. Now Moff Gideon has it, so it's been in the hands of the Empire. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I guarantee you there will be. I'll say this about Filoni: he does like to dovetail, whether or not you think it's appropriate, whether or not you think it works. He definitely connects the tissue. Now, if this were J.J. Abrams and there was a part where Moff Gideon, how did you get your hands on the Darksaber? Maz Kanata would show up and do her immortal line from The Force Awakens. That is a story for another time. When Rey asked how she got hold of
I remember that.
Luke Skywalker.
Like, well, I've got plenty of time, so let's.
By the way, never covered in the films whatsoever. I don't even know if it was covered in anything. It's probably the most like lackluster, anticlimactic. She got it at a freaking
like a yard sale.
Yeah, yard sale or a flea market. She's like, this looks cool. That's supposed to be my Maz Kanata. I don't know what that was.
Good impression.
Yeah, very accurate. What do you think, man? I mean, what stood out to you other than the lack of Moff Gideon, the presence of shiny stormtroopers, the crouching lady? What do you think? What else stood out to you? Oh, the boat. I mean, you're really big on the boat.
Yeah, right. I mentioned the boat already. Like I said, stuff like that, the industrial, sort of things that improve the anything like that. It doesn't have to be real to me, but I enjoy seeing it from a different perspective rather than always seeing the more mystical perspective of the Jedi and stuff like that.
The Jedi.
So that's great. I like that. I think it looked beautiful, like I said, or it looked great.
Oh, we saw looks like there was some like alien WWE going on.
Oh yeah, the very end there, at the end of the trailer.
Yeah, there was interesting like square off. There was like
match or something
with triple preparation H and some like Gamorreans and stuff like that. Looks like we saw a ring and turnbuckles, and it looks like a wrestling match. May have been a boxing match or mixed martial arts.
It's probably a throwback to like old boxing where you had all the people
Joe Rogan's commentating in front of the stands.
Right. Well, I was thinking more of like back in the 30s and stuff, or 40s, and they had the maybe you'd have the mob boss there or whatever.
Yeah. Make him an offer I couldn't refuse.
I
just said it made him an offer I couldn't refuse, which wouldn't make any sense.
On this.
Yeah. Might segue beautifully into The Godfather. No, I think it was effective. It was not what I was expecting. I was expecting more of like basically a snapshot of what the season's going to be about. I have no clue.
So at the end of the day, I don't know what it's going to be about. There's just going to be Mandalorian, Baby Yoda, and hooded figure standing behind boxes. Maybe she stands behind boxes for the entire season. I don't know.
That is
maybe
I could see it. She like works for like a U-Haul company or something, and she just like constantly.
But she only appears when it's a crowded street, so she can disappear as people walk between you.
That's how she's going to be defeated. If she's a Jedi, if there is a Jedi, at some point Mando's going to fight one. Okay, and hopefully they do that well. We'll see. But that's how he's going to beat her. I've already got it figured out. So they fight over Baby Yoda. He's reluctant to relinquish Baby Yoda. She wants to take him, probably for altruistic reasons. But they fight over the child.
Right.
And being a Jedi, even a Jedi Padawan, she has certain advantages over him, right? So even if she's not a full-on master, just being like a regular schmuck with a lightsaber and a mediocre force connection, she's pretty cognitive, she's telekinetic, she's probably faster, blah, blah, blah. So he's going to have to use every trick in the arsenal to try to best her. And he's on the ropes. He is on the ropes, but he flees. And he lures her into an empty warehouse where there are no boxes, no debris. Her powers are neutralized. She can do nothing. The lightsaber just like flickers out. Exactly. Yes. He's like, "You're in my world now," but he probably doesn't have that accent. But if he did, it would be really cool.
Totally went right. We went in different directions there.
But the total absence of boxes and obstructions behind which she can hide, it neuters her powers. She's helpless.
And no crowd.
No crowd. No witnesses whatsoever. That's it. That's her kryptonite. You mark my words, ladies and gentlemen. Fictionology called it first. She's going to be defeated in a boxless, empty warehouse.
I can see it. I think we got it. We got it figured out. But overall, good trailer. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how season 2 goes. I'm looking forward to it. But I hope they kind of use the first season to figure out what they want to do, and the second season's more focused. And I hope they keep throwing in atmosphere and mood, that you can really feel. It's really, I want to describe it as thick, but
with like 3 C's, thick or whatever.
Yeah, right.
I'm probably not saying it right. Okay, last thing before we end it, because this is the most important thing. We've speculated as to whether or not we will see the return of Moff Gideon, or a wardrobe changing Snoke, or even the Emperor. But there is one personage who's around at this time, who's a bit of an icon that we have not mentioned, whether or not he or she will be seen. And that is, drum roll please.
Dun, dun. Well, I can't do a drum roll. Go ahead.
I can't do that. That was probably a machine gun. I don't know. The
generator.
That's right. The power went out. The guys, everyone, the power went out. The generators kicked on. The person in question, whose appearance is totally ambiguous, who may not be involved, but I think may play a presence, whose shadow has loomed over the first season, and I would argue this trailer. The person from whom the planet in the beginning of this trailer was hiding The Enterprise hobo from the very first scene in season 1, the flautist. That's
He
the
must come
person.
back.
We never saw him die.
No, he must come back.
That flautist is still out there.
He's still
Lurking.
calling Ubers for
That's so weird.
random people walking out of bars again.
Well, you have no idea how disappointed I've been ever since I saw that. Every time I've had to use an Uber or go to Enterprise for a rental car, like when mine was being worked on, the fact that the Enterprise agent did not summon my rental car with a flute was incredibly disappointing to me.
Sometimes life just can't live up to our expectations, and
No,
that's one of them.
And I think that's probably the biggest crime of The Mandalorian.
No,
is that it set unrealistic expectations. But
I totally agree with that. And it's like every rental car, or if there's like an Uber stand or taxi stand, needs to have a flautist
or something, some sort of like instrument, like an oboe.
Right? They can
An
they
oboe,
can put
a
their own
hobo
spin.
with an oboe, because you kept calling him a hobo. That's what it is. A oboe. Anyway, I think that's all we've got. I think we're clearly out of material, but yeah, it was great. It was great watching this with you. I'm on the same boat. I am tentatively interested in season 2. Hopefully, it will be an improvement over season 1, and really be a solid step forward, as I think the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game was for canon,
Right.
for Disney's stewardship of the Star Wars IP. So I hope they succeed every time. I will never lose my hope that Star Wars is a success.
Same here.
And that this will kind of herald a new chapter in the Star Wars. So, got anything else?
No, just everybody, if you like the video, please like it
And subscribe to the channel as well.
Yeah, feel free. We'd like to have at least 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, that's our goal, man. We can stop at 2. Early retirement.
2 people. 3 people.
And one thing I do want to reiterate on behalf of us is, again, this is kind of a passion project. We're 2 nerds that have talked about stuff like this for as long as we've been friends, and
right.
And we've talked about it with other friends as well. And this is definitely, again, a project that was born from boredom during COVID quarantine and stuff like that. And hopefully you find it entertaining and interesting. If you like it, we'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. That sort of external validation. It's always nice. I'm not going to sit here and say that it reduces us to tears when we don't get it, but it does for Bardikins. I'm fine, but Bardikins is super fragile.
I'm already in tears.
Okay, come on. Put it together. Pull it together.
I'll pull it together.
No, we would greatly appreciate it in all sincerity, and we will continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also if you like content like this, we also do have an audio podcast that we host, and we're trying to get it up on as many places that host podcasts as possible, and we'll provide a link to our Podbean website directly in the description below as well. For those of you that like to listen to us banter on the go, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we appreciate everything, guys and gals, and we will continue to put some content out there. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, in addition to liking and subscribing, we'd love to hear back from you. So feel free to drop a comment. If you thought we raised an interesting point, by all means. If you thought we raised a point that absolutely sucked, feel free to share that too. We've got some thick skin, and we're willing to foster debate and dissent. So anyway, I think that's everything. Bardikins, anything else?
No, that's all I've got.
All right, me too. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is Fictionology out.
We'll see you on the next one.